So my question is, how much does a student or a practitioner need to put in to their practice or their studentship? What is required?
Again, it's who is requiring. It's not about what is required. It's about who is it that is what you're calling a student. See, that's a big question mark. Who is it that you're calling a student? Who is it that you're calling a practitioner? See, and this is, I'm not sure, a real question at this stage of the game. But basically, you have beginners, you have babies who want to hear about it, they want to know the theory, they want to read up on it, they don't want to do anything about it. So that's obvious. You know, the people who like the information about the Dharma or practice, but they can't do anything about it. You know, the practitioners who are peeps who don't want to read about it, don't want to talk about it, they want to do it. And that's it. All they want to do is do it. They have to be into it. So you have it starting up here in the headland, right? Little old mental neuroses, confusion, need to know, desperate urge to read something of some kind of answer. Then you have those that are right around here and say, got to do it. Not just a little bit. So it's not about materialism. Oh, if you do this much, you got that much. So, practitioners have to get it done. They're not exactly students, they're not beginners. Practitioner is one who's doing it, is engaged in the actual self-liberational technique. So I don't just hear about more information, but I don't want to hear the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. That's if it's some form of self-validation. Practitioners want to be done with it. And they're doing what they can. Ordinarily, whatever the sacrifice is, once they realize that what's keeping them from understanding or entering, let's say, some kind of sense of reality, liberation, let's use the term liberation. They want to know what it is so they can get to the liberation experience as quickly as possible. That means be free of. See? Be free of it. So you don't need to hear it 10,000 times, you need to be free of it. See? You don't need to hear it 10,000 ways, you need to be free of it by 10,000 different people from 10,000 different schools, that you need to be free of it. See? Your condition already screams out loud that you need to be free of yourself. Limitation. Thought patterns, neurosis, head neurosis, confusion, inability to move forward or straight up, cut through. It's very, very clear. So practice is all about the process of cutting through all the webs, all of the debris, all of the thickness of conditioning, equaling darkness, see? Inability, unhappiness, and so on and so forth. So it's not like, well, if you do this much or you do that much, here I got a dime here, can I get a dime's worth? Well, yeah, wait, I got 2 more pennies, 12 cents. Give me 12 cents worth of this stuff, will you? That'll hold me off till the next visit. Wait. Hey, honey, did you have a quarter? Here, we're going to add a quarter to it. 37 cents. Yeah, that's what we want 37 cents worth of whatever it is. That's not what it is. You can't negotiate what it is. Because then it's the same problem. You're reinforcing the same self-programming of limiting it to quantity then. So, limiting it to time even. How much time in? Well, I was in this place for 45 years, so does that mean I finally got it? You know, I was sitting with so-and-so for 45 years and listening to it and even sucking his toenails or her toenails, and did I get it yet? Have I gotten it yet? It's not about practice. There's no practice in that. It's not about time. It's not about location either. It's not about where you did it. Oh, I have to go over to the mountains and then the caves and do what so-and-so did in order to get there. Doing things by imitation. There's no imitation that's going to get you what it is. You stand on your head till your last breath, and all you've done in that life is stood on your head till your last breath. It doesn't mean anything beyond that. Right? What is that doing? What you think it's about? What you've seen others do? So that's what it's about? Probably not so. That's not being true to what it is. So it's not really about time. It's not about relative space and time, or the time of space. It's not about that. It's not about energy. See, how much effort you make. Although all of these things are useful in the beginning, because you need to know what it is. So before you can know what it is, you need to know what it isn't. You got to try time, you got to try space, you got to try energy, and you have to try matter. You know, it has to matter to you. What the matter of it is. And then you have to try mind. You have to get to mind finally. After you get through the lower dynamics of these so-called dimensions of consciousness, then you have to get to mind. See? And see if it's got anything to do with mind. Then after years and years going around in the tumble and the spin cycle of the mind, you realize it's not about the mind either. It's not about who said what. Even that doesn't pan out as anything. So you go on this, oh, here comes Mr. Who Said What. Hey, yo, who said what? How you doing? How you feeling today? Have you heard anything more important than what you've been saying all these years? Concerning who said what? Where and why? Under what conditions? It's more the same. Yeah, but people don't know that. People don't see into it like that. So you ask something of a question. You know, like, are there beginnings? Does anybody begin this thing? Is anybody into it? Does anybody end it? Yeah. And so who knows that? Who knows that? You have more wood for the fire. See, there's something really telling about this, really interesting. And it has to do with knowing and not knowing. And so as long as you feel that information about what it is valid, you're not going to know it. Well, what about this? I have a question about that. Okay. 40 years later, you know, I have some more questions about this and that. Who said what? Under what conditions and why? It's a lifetime. Wasted. Wasted. So it's a way of wasting time. And we need to waste time. We do need to waste time. We need to be able to waste time and create time. Right? But most importantly, we need to transcend time. We need to waste mind, we need to create mind, but we need to transcend mind. Okay? We need to waste body, we need to understand and master body, actually, but we need to transcend it. We need to use it, for sure. Same with all the other functions of intelligence. They're all wastable, they're all usable, masterable to some degree, and then we have to transcend that. Whatever it is needs to be transcended. Period. Whoever it is needs to be transcended. Period. In other words, when we're talking about the master level, if there is such a thing, it's already done with everything. That's the already done and gone level. There's nothing left, nobody left. Then it's a demonstration of what it is to be. Already gone, already done. Already basically here, being that, here. Which might be considered then good practice. Already done, already gone, then amounts to good practice. Beyond beginner, beyond student, beyond disciple, beyond devotee, beyond all of it. Beyond practice. You're not going to get beyond practice till you master it. You have to waste it. Everybody's always doing that. You have to master it. Not too many are doing that. It's only in the aspect of mastering that beyondness shows up. And that's because we are then dabbling in states of consciousness that have real consequence. And thus real usefulness.
What is mastery?
Having done it. See? Doing it and having done it. And taking things as they come, just like that. No problem. No attachment to it. No blah blah about it. No suffering. No confusion. You're entering a whole different dimension of consciousness. Having experienced the neuroses, having been the neurotic, see, confused, disturbed, in doubt, insecure, see, up and down, see, incapable, the victim of your river of blood programming or culturing, all the rest of it, having seen that very clearly, been on the bottom of the heap, see, you start to look at it properly and you start to unravel all of that, see, or burn it, if you can do that. You start to rise. See, that's what mastery seems like. Where you're in the rising of it. So intelligence begins to arise. You start to know from the fact of arisingness. Yeah. Yeah. So then there's an aspect of elevation in this case. Some would call it vibrational uplift. Yeah. Some would call it a upgrading of your state of consciousness. From self-doubt to no doubt. from all self to no self. It's part of the theory, but it's also part of the fact. Because of what realization manifests as. It's not just a person, it's how this thing manifests itself. See? The no one in everyone manifests itself when it's allowed to be what it is as itself, relative to aloneness, awareness. All one awareness. So it's the basic. And it's always the same message, phrased differently. Because it is a certain level of reality that may just be a stepping stone. It may be the first step. The first real step into knowingness, nowhereness, nothingness, as a starting point. Not conceptually, but consciously, awakely.
Is mastery a process or a point?
It's not a thing. It's a term. You can say it's closer to a process rather than a product. But there is a product. There's no doubt about it. It's a level of reality. In other words, it's a level of operation. But that's already known and understood to the extreme, because that's what the traditions are about. Building and making masters. See? Not Arnold Schwarzenegger's, but masters. See? Self-liberated masters. Who know the human nature very, very clearly. And they don't have to be taught it all the time. See? So you have different types of masters who are self-realized masters, who come to it spontaneously because of karma and destiny and certain configurations which enable that to spring up and out by itself. And then you have training, years and years and ages of training, from neurosis to clear mind, peacefulness, understanding, wisdom understanding. So we're talking about a massive overhaul from self-centeredness to this stage of heart-centeredness. So equates with compassionate service, see? Which is not stupid. It's not, oh, you showed up, so I have to serve you. I have to do all this for you, regardless of who the person is. No. It's not like that. It's not unconscious, very conscious, very extremely intelligent. Precise, in fact. And yet there's nobody involved in it, but it's extremely intelligent, very, very sharp, precise, clear, and even sweet in a certain sense, depending on how you see it. So this is understood already. Practice, real practice makes it obvious beyond words. So that's why I say to you and everyone else who moves in this direction, get beyond the words and the thought processes. For the sake of education, I say get to stillness. But don't think when you get to stillness that stillness is a solution. It isn't.
Sounds like then there's no solution.
Sounds like it. Sounds like it, there's no solution, sounds like there's a solution. So no solution is a solution. Yeah. But then, as you say, it only sounds like it. Right. Everything only sounds like it. Everything said and thought only sounds like it. Till there's a breaking open, wide open, into what it is. Yeah.
You mentioned maybe more than a year ago a turn of the phrase, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And this reconfiguration was, when the teacher is ready, the student will disappear.
What does that mean?
It seems to mean, or it seems to relate to what we're talking about quite directly. But then who is the teacher?
Well, that's obvious. I mean, you'd have to be some kind of super idiot to not see what the teacher is, to know what that is. Yeah. Certainly not the monkey in the mirror. Certainly not that. We're not concerned about who the teacher is. We're concerned about who's suffering. The teacher is teachers, not suffering. On the other end of the stick, you have what you're calling a student, who is the embodiment of suffering, see, by assumption, see, by a whole different level of practice, before real practice, see, cultural sort of reactivity and response and so on and so forth. See? All of this is so well known and documented, it's almost adding to the profound redundancy of the whole thing.
At what point does the student disappear?
When you do. Yeah. When you do. Yeah. And the student, whatever that is, disappears. So you have to disappear. See? Everyone must disappear, see? So to speak. So there's a lot of practice going on in the world. But who knows what of that practice is actually the kind of practice required by the adepts at spiritual understanding. Or we can say the teachings of the masters of realization. There's a lot of teachings, obviously, a lot of teachers. And everyone is more or less given their right to teach. Everyone has a right to teach. Right? Everyone has a right to teach anything. And then you have the realized beings themselves who really don't care if they teach, but that's also their function. It's not even to teach them. See, it's to demonstrate living the paradox of realization. Peeps. It's not about information and catchphrases and all of this other nonsense, see, appearances. It's really about being beyond self-thought and mind. Body, word, and world, all together. Okay? The same instance. Zero. And live it from that place. Open, zero. Okay? Practice. And then, from that place, if that is a place at all, or space, if it is a space at all, then what comes your way, you respond to in a certain way. Whatever arises is dealt with, unique to itself. And it's not like self-meditation, it's dealt with directly, see, in the spirit of the fire of the heart itself. So it's already done. It's not a mental process. It's much more of a being present. Talking about being present or being in the presence. That is beyond question. Beyond question and answer. Beyond self and other. We might be getting somewhere at that point.
Seems like there'd be a lot of knowing at that place or at that point, and not that many questions.
Well, it wouldn't be called knowing, see, at that point. See. Who wants to know at that point? See. The knowing is beyond knowing. That seems to be ungraspable for the intellectuals, for the educated, and those who thrive on education as a source of some kind of self-validation, at some level of knowing, but not necessarily some level at self-transcending knowing. Self-building knowing, yes. Self-transcending knowing, very different process for the few. So it seems that what you're experiencing right now in this moment is a little bit of the burn. Showing up as some kind of mindless state, thoughtless state. And that's part of the process. Not thinking mindless, thoughtless, but trying with all your heart to come up with a decent question, and there is none. In other words, the question is disappearing. You were just talking about the phrase, the twist of the phrase. When the master's ready, the questioner disappears. So it is. Let it be so. And that doesn't mean no questions arise. That means that they don't arise from a questioner. They may arise of themselves, with a radically different quality of, let's say, wording, and not about, let's say, curiosity or information for information's sake, or talk for talk's sake, say video for video's sake, say for self-amusement or self-entertainment. So Deepa is not a concept. Deepa is a force of intelligence. And that's part of the preliminary realization of what it is beyond self, thought, and mind. You feel the presence of this, whether you call it the presence of the guru, the master, the burn, see, the heart, or the realization, you feel it. And it leaves you empty. Leaves you void. See? It enables you to access, let's say, 2 cents of nirvana. 2 cents worth. Clearness. Nothingness. See? Which is a radiance. Even though people or beginners may try to come up with something because they survive on showing up a certain way, there's nothing. And then you have to learn to adapt to that. And somehow or other be okay with that, which is beyond yourself. And that's practice. And sometimes the master has to take you to that place and drop you off at that place. Because you can't get there yourself. Yourself by nature obstructs it. And that's the truth of it. The self is obstruction. The heart is liberation. Between those two extremes is your field of practice. And it's not hype, it's not theory, it just is what it is. And language often falls short of actually precisely describing what it is in consciousness. And we're talking about the disappearance process, and the fact of disappearedness, and voidness, is actually a form of not ignorance, but radiance, beingness, in the moment. Beyond people's suffering, beyond their trips, beyond what they know, they don't know, their culture, their traditions, their gurus, their practices, their beliefs, their convictions, and everything else. It's beyond it. We might say then, it's light for light's sake. And it has to do with the knowingness as the original state of selfless heartfulness. So it's important to know the state of already disappeared, because you can recover it under the right conditions, because it takes the right conditions to enter it. You can't get there by reading about it. See? Then you're thinking you're getting there, and you're not there if you're thinking it. It already is. It's a matter of opening to what it is. We're not thinking it. It's called being open to what it is, not thinking open to what it is. All things and all beings are what this is. But it doesn't mean that they are awake as it is. They are karmically or culturally born asleep to what it is. But the potential is there, because you can dream about what it is. You can intuit what it is. That is your true nature, or I call it your hue nature, already burned. Yeah. The hue nature of already burned. See? Already released, already liberated. Okay? That is our function and condition. But everything you say and do reflects that and comes from that when it is realized as such. Everything else disappears. See? Everything else doesn't hold up to what it is. See? So again, it is what is, and it is original potential, it is original reality. And no religion has a monopoly on that, regardless of how sophisticated or elaborate commentaries and teachings are about it. It's not a teaching, it's not a commentary, it's not a theory, it's not a reflection, it's beyond all of that. It's presence. Radical, super presence of nothingness. We can even call it spirit. It means totally, radically immaterial in nature. Clear, void even. Void of stuff, stains, traces of anything. Gone, just gone. The burn of hue nature. The hue of burn nature, same thing. And the words are after the fact, confirming what it is or might be. Fire, it's hot. That's what people know what you mean. Cold, it's like ice. Everyone gets it. Stick a blade or a knife through the hand, say, yeah, got it, that hurts. Maybe, say it, we understand. Words are useful, up to a point. So when we're talking about that kind of position relative to realization, then we need to enter that state to some degree to verify that the state is more than just theory. And when it's self-realized or self-sprung in a manner of speaking, it doesn't make it any different from any other realization that may have taken 40 years to season, culture, or develop, cultivate. The realization is the same thing. Why? Because there's only the same thing. But it doesn't mean that everybody who knows there's only the same thing is going to have the same kind of realization where what they say shows up as practically, nearly, identically the same thing. Same kind of precision. So everyone's born into it, but not many people awaken as it. And actually, not too many people care to awaken as it at all. In fact, they loathe the idea of what it is. You mean know this, know that, free of this, free of that? No deal. Myself and body can't have any of that. See, I need this garbage. I need this agony here. I need this humping and pumping and jumping and lumping everything together into some happy idea of sensual life experience. Good for you. It's yours to enjoy. Not that that's a problem, but that becomes a barrier for people, the limit of their experience. I make it the God. The God of the body God. Nothing there concerning the heart, it's just the body. And we are always and once the heart itself, despite the body, despite the mind, despite the self, despite thought. What it is that. The core reality, original core reality. But who dares and who cares to be with what that is, or as that is, or in what that is, or even aware of what that is, let alone living as a demonstration of the madness of what that is. Question is never a problem. Answer is never a problem. It's where it comes from. How it's used. It's like the mind is never the problem. The genitals are never the problem. How it's used. Fingers are never the problem. Heart is never the problem. Depends on how it's used. Brain, how it's used. You have anger. Anger's never by itself the problem, but depends on how it's used. Even confusion. Depends on how you use it, if you're using it. The idea is, well, are you used by what it is, said condition, or circumstances, or karmas, or are you using them properly? See? To good purpose. That's it. So in the beginning of the process, people come as victims of their own karma, victims of their own bodies, their own minds, and their own emotions, and their lack of discipline. And eventually they enter some kind of phase of discipline. And not because somebody tells them to do it particularly, but because they realize that unless they pull themselves together, start to discipline themselves, organize themselves properly, focus themselves, then their life is going to be more the same. So hopefully by that time they start to see a little bit of what we call creative logic, and they start to pull themselves together, because the results that they're getting, the state of mind that they're being, is not the state of mind or the result that they want. They have to see beyond what they are being used by the karma as, in terms of a confused being and so on, or an unhappy being, and say, no, I want to use this opportunity, this lifetime, for a good purpose. So put it to purpose. That means recreating yourself, redesigning yourself, reawakening yourself, completely.
So to do so spiritually, to redesign and recreate, is that a deconstructive process more so or less so than a constructive process?
It's a reconstructive process. Not even deconstruction. So the past doesn't have to be destroyed. You need to add layers on that are more useful. Yeah. So the idea is to have respect for the past, respect for the status quo, but then create something beyond that, that is more or less what you want to use as a bridge to the infinite. See? And so I think the idea of higher practice for beginners is the idea of laying year after year, or accumulating year after year, more positive karmic experience, see? Which builds good karma. The clearer you are year after year, then the clearer you are likely to be subsequent years. So you're building on it. You have a foundation of clarity. You want more clarity. It's a pretty natural process for peeps. Say, no, I want to build upon this so that I continue this and advance it, upgrade it, improve it, maybe even perfect it. As part of, let's say, an annual system of mastery. Say, yes, no, I'm finished with these karmas, these indulgences, these attitudes, these views, these programs, these games, and now I want, or these results, yes, and now I want to further my purpose and be able to suffer those things less and enjoy the higher things more and share that or work from that relative to other beings. Be of service to peeps accordingly. Okay? Not a bad idea, not a bad proposition, not a bad script. Okay? So then we are in the process of self-mastery. Gaining more control over what we thought controlled us completely. So, oh, these emotions, I see. So I don't need to suffer these emotions or these doubts, these confusions. See, these moments of who knows what's going on. See, non-clarity. Or worse, making mistakes. See, not being able to judge things and beings properly. And that's what the clarificational process is about. That's why we need to go deep. We need to get out of self-thought and mind programming and get away from body confusion as quickly as possible. And to the clarity of what it is that your potential begs for. Knowing better and doing better as a result.
What's the most reliable gauge for determining whether something is
happiness? Happiness is the only reliable gauge. We don't mean self-contentment, because you're happy you're not suffering a certain kind of karma. We're talking about happiness. See? Happiness. Happiness means freedom from the things. Happiness doesn't mean, oh, the freedom to do the things, the license to do things, because that's given to everybody. See? You're on your own. Happiness is beyond the things. Happiness is finding contentment in no things as well as some things. But then it's the no thing happiness, that quality or grade of happiness, the no thing grade of happiness, that seems the most enduring of all the different grades. Why are you happy? Oh, for nothing? No reason. Unreasonable happiness is definitely a good sign of practice. I'm just happy because I'm happy. Perfect. It's not about who's there, who's not there, what's not there. What's in your pocket, what's in your bank account, what's in your house or what's out of your house. There's nothing to do with that. It's not material. We're talking about spiritual happiness then. Happiness for its own sake. And that's practice. Getting to that place is what being on the spiritual path is about. Dematerializing consciousness. And from the dematerialized state you can handle, depending on your karma, you can handle more material stuff, but it's from that place. So it's not the material stuff in at all. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you're a billionaire. As long as you are dematerialized enough to be of spiritual use to yourself and other peeps, and that's good. Then you're in the service of other peeps. It's the fact that you have a billion or less than a billion doesn't arise at all. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you have. True wealth is in spiritual terms. See? Higher wealth is in spiritual terms. Wisdom. What price can you put on wisdom? See, just a quote, even in some cases. It's precious, cuts through. So it's the wisdom, supermind, that is important for peeps. That's how you want to traverse your, let's say, responsible incarnation in the time, space, energy, matter worlds. And that's to be a light unto yourself, so you can never be without the light, because you're walking and living and breathing the light itself, so it could be better than that. Everyone else is up and down. There's no up and down here. Just is what it is. You go through changes to appear up and down. The core is the same. Come on.
A word that some people don't understand as equating with happiness. Well, can you talk about the word neutrality relative to how you were using the word happiness?
Well, before you can get to this kind of happiness, spiritual happiness, you have to be neutral. There's no way you're going to get to spiritual happiness unless there's balance. See? Spiritual happiness is a result of balance. See? This is built upon balance. See? And balance then is based upon the practice of non-duality. Not being for or against anything. Neither self nor other. These concepts. But you have to build upon that. Not just talk about it and think about it and think that thinking about it and talking about it is amounting to building on it. No. You have to go beyond thinking about it and talking about it. That means you have to walk the path and create the path of balancement. Not here, not there. She's over there, he's over there. No, here. That's up there, this is down there. No, here. Everything everywhere else, here. Who cares? Here. Basic. Practice. So after walking the path for years, in terms of stable practice relative to the balance, non-extremes, regardless of what the changes are that whack you in the face or kick you in the rear end, say no. Push, hesitation, whatever, karmic bumps in the road, no difference. Then there's accumulation, the right kind of center. Say heart center, then there's the possibility of what's called spiritual happiness. Then you enter the state of spiritual happiness, and that doesn't go away. It's just there. You don't have to have a huge smile on your face ear to ear. That's not happiness. That's just a big face with a smile on it. Yeah. It's pretty silent. It is faceless happiness. Might be called true happiness. It might also be called a word that hasn't been used here much. And that's vairagya. Detachment. Caring less. Compassionate, but caring less. No cares. Carefree. And then from the carefree state, you're free to handle all your business. So you do it carefreely. You handle your relations carefreely. Not merely carefully, but carefreely. Then spiritual happiness is no longer like something you need to look through a telescope to see, a glimpse of, say, vibrating through the lenses there. Zillions of miles away. In the ethers, no. I say, no, that's home. Say, I have it right here. Say, this is practical. This is wise. This is healthy. We're talking about healthy. Psychophysical balancement. Healthy. Reconciliation of the differences and the disparities between, different levels of, say, material and subtle energies. Line them up properly. And be okay with that. Not have your mind jumping all over the place like a bunch of wild animals. So, no, it's what you're capable of. It doesn't mean that's what you need to be. So you want to get away from being Mr. Zookeeper and get into being the mind keeper. Yeah. So I want to be the mind keeper. Yeah. Animals are fun, they're crazy, wild, but I want to be the mind keeper. Yeah. Well, clearly and obviously, the mind keeper is not a mind keeper. So the mind keeper is appropriately called a mind keeper because there's no mind to keep. It's so kept, it doesn't exist. Right, so whatever the mind is gone. It's like the keeper of the gate. So over here, there's nothing behind the gate. It's gone. It's already taken. It disappeared. That's the true nature of what it is. It's gone. See, when it's that gone, then there's happiness. Just as you started to chuckle, so when you heard that it was gone, that's happiness. See? Nothing there. Mm-hmm. And the mind keeper keeps it that way. Mm-hmm. Oh, in other words, the mind keeper says, only nothing is allowed to pass through here. Only no one goes this way. It's a mind keeper. It's kind of humorous, but silly, absolutely true and clear. Then there is what we're talking about in terms of spiritual happiness, which is irrational, unreasonable. There's nothing to be happy about. And that's precisely what it is. You're happy about nothing. No one. Who can handle that? Who wants anything like that? Right? And we're talking about, yes, no, the appearance and of madness, and that's what it would appear to be. Okay? That's why it's called incomprehensible. You have to be out of your mind to go to meet with the gatekeeper. But finally and ultimately, each one is the gatekeeper. Okay? Once they have dug deep enough into their own beings and reached high enough, so to speak, and broadly enough to the left, to the right, deep down inside, and way, way, way up, and high in the infinite sky of the mind, you get to that point where there's nothing. Stretched to the infinite, nothing, gatekeeper. Yeah. Good practice. Yeah. The master. Yeah. The master of silence. The master of nothingness. See? The master of no one.